Good evening, everybody. NAVA here, and we're here with another episode of Eastern Clubbing for LINEA Radio. So I am a Persian DJ and musician and artist, and I have started doing this program because there have been so many artists that I've been loving recently, especially watching a lot of different boiler rooms, especially the ones for the after parties of Primavera Sound, and that took me on a journey to discover all these Eastern sounds that are actually very close to home, being Persian. And that is why I started doing this deep dives on all these North African and Middle Eastern artists that aren't maybe as famous as they actually should be. So I wanted to shed a light and get all the all my European peeps to follow them and have a listen. Today's episode is gonna be on Mushkila. So Mushkila is a Copenhagen-born DJ and producer with his roots in North Kurdistan. He grew up listening to the sound of Darbuka rather than disco music. So that's why in all of his work, you can also listen to that very interesting and Eastern melodies of the Darbuka. He was 29 when he started producing electronic music and had only done hip hop before that. So it's kind of interesting because if you listen to episode 2, we were focusing on Zuli, who also had a hip hop background. And I loved how they actually joined on that matter. So for those who don't know, we're gonna have a little musical instrument lesson today and about the Darbuka. The Darbuka is a goblet-shaped drum that many people consider to be the leader of percussion instruments in the Middle East and North Africa. And I'm gonna quote Mushkila over here where he says, "I went out a lot throughout my youth and listened to a lot of electronic music, but I never really felt represented through music. I grew up with artists like Ahmed Kaya or Kurdish bands, wedding music," which is similar to what DJ Plea tells us about his initial initiation to the world of Eastern music, in his case, Lebanese. And he listened to all sorts and types of music that you would typically hear when you're out and about in Kurdistan. And that is the first time he kind of connected to a genre, let's say. He mentions that having the Darbuka and the Zorna and other tonalities in his music is because it awakens something similar in him, as in a sense of roots and a sense of belonging and a sense of heritage, which is a lot of the DJs that I've been focusing on come from the same place. Basically, it has been always a matter of reconnecting to your roots. And it's kind of also why I chose to focus on this theme for my program as well, because it was a way for me to connect to my Persian roots as well, digging deeper into the rhythms and the tonalities. A very close to home, significant concept about Mushkila and his way of living music is that he's actively involved in promoting diversity within the club scenes and the art scene, co-funding the platform Bohar and contributing to Fragment Radio. And I must say that also DJ Pleat had the same concept with his Somak collective, where they give space. Also, Zuli with the Vent club that he was running back in the day, with giving space to artists and DJs and producers that maybe have not been given the chance to shine and to be seen. And I love that about their collective and their mindset. Okay, now let's have a listen to Mushkila's first release, Huzun, where he releases this with a video clip, which is super interesting. I'm gonna play that for you guys, and we're gonna see and talk about it later on. So I absolutely recommend you go and have a look at this video clip because it's absolutely a work of art. It is set against a backdrop of a crumbling town, a small town in southeastern Turkey where the Kurdish communities have traditionally been concentrated. And whilst I was watching it, it felt very melancholy. It was like flashbacks of maybe a world that had been there a while ago and doesn't really exist nowadays. And it feels very pure and nostalgic and very free, I can say. And you can hear some samples that remind me of Zulin Azotiwalin's kind of concept because there are a lot of surrounding sounds and some maybe prayer sounds, some look at just atmosphere that creates a whole melancholy vibe to it. So Huzun actually is a meditation of brotherhood following 5 real-life best friends as they liberate themselves from boring everyday life. And and it's about them finding their own pleasure-induced fun and freeing themselves from the harsh realities thanks to music and just setting free into dance, into movement, and just kind of running away and escaping into a safe place that is music. And after doing my research on Mushkila, liberation through and thanks to music is one of the main themes that he focuses on, and is one of his objectives, not only with his own music, but also through artist collectives, for example, Bohar and Fragment Radio, as we were talking about. And with one foot in the Kurdish community and the other in the Copenhagen community where he's currently based, Mushkila creates bridges between cultures and therefore between people, which is why he wants to create this bridge and closeness into creating a community. I quote, "Kurds currently live under a tremendous amount of pressure both in Iran and in Turkey, and my aim with my music is to create more awareness around the Kurdish struggle for independence." And you can absolutely see that and understand that through the video of Huzun as well, which is very touching, especially when you read about the concept that he had in his mind and how the freedom of these young guys kind of is connected to the freedom of the Kurdish community. So the video is part stage and part documentary, and the camera follows their reaction and their movements on beat, together with the joie de vivre that they have that allows them to get lost and be free in a frenetic and kind of also a dark situation, you could say. And that is their way of being free and liberated. I really wanted to focus on this as well. At first sight, the sound is fresh, reflecting the language of the youth and inviting, and it's dancing, it's simplicity, it's a vibe, it's freedom. And the sound is also dark though. It's impactful and not as free as it seems. It takes cues from fusion of tradition and contemporary genres. And it also adds a higher understanding of what Mushkila's art is trying to bring out from the audience, you could say. Also, in particular, on the dark side, heavy bass, impactful Darbuka jams are mixed with intense techno that kind of shed a light on the struggle that the Kurdish are having at the moment for their independence. Okay, back to his mix for Drift Radio for one sec. So after his release of Huzun, we have the release of Qar in January 11th, 2023. So Qar in Mushkila's idea is what he would imagine the perfect club track to be. The tracks are dominated by the Darbuka, which we have again, and which is his signature touch, inspired by his Kurdish heritage, with which seem as if a percussion melody is happening over a techno beat. And I think that's very important to have as a producer and a DJ, your specific touch that is very recognizable and it's very unique to you. And he says that all of this was happening during the start of the Iranian Revolution, when he was following it closely and listening to very hard techno tracks at the same time. I actually have this very close to my heart, being Persian and Iranian and following the same revolution and following what the struggles were and still are and what he's thinking about. I love how he has pictured and put into music the struggle and the darkness of those times. And I also quote, and he says, "So I started Ghar by using samples of people in Iran shouting during the uprising that Azita, his collaborator from their collective Bohar, sent him. And he just added a hard kick to it. And from there it evolved. And during this trip to Jordan afterwards, it was kind of a way to kind of bring his thoughts together and come up with the whole concept and idea all together. From there, everything he did was to show the beauty of the region or some kind of nuances that maybe get left behind or lost in translation, because we're very used to the stereotypical concept and perception of what Middle East is and what Middle Eastern people are like, and that is what he wants to kind of clear up and shed a light on, because he wants you to see the beauty that is also in the Middle East and all the concept of him bringing people together and being the bridge that connects populations and connects the kind of different parts of the world together through his music. So whilst doing my research and finding out about him being connected to the Persian uprising and also his trip to Jordan, I found out that during his trip to Jordan, he met this underground scene of people of the Amman drifting community, where people just go out of town as far as they can and start drifting with their cars, which is something kind of illegal in Jordan because you're not as free as to do whatever you would like to, and that's why it's considered an underground scene. And he says, we had to meet in slightly remote locations and it was a bit dodgy because they are not so happy to shoot these videos for fear of the police. We drove a quarter of an hour out of Amman and then another quarter before they felt safe. Then we had to drift, shoot these videos, and hurry back again because in Jordan you just can't do that. And I think it was the perfect mix to mix the Jordan situation with the Persian situation because it's the kind of same unable to be as free or have the freedom of speech as that is happening in both countries, maybe in Iran a bit more than Jordan. But I feel like they kind of have the same nuances as he has been talking about, and it has been the perfect mix to create them in Ghar, his 2-track release. Later on, in March, on the 29th, he had the release of Kashish Hammam later, and that is the single that he released afterwards. He says, this one was recorded with one hell of a Mijwiz player, Mustafa al-Balawai. I originally wanted to make a danceable tune out of recordings with Mustafa, but decided to let the Mijwiz do its work, and this one is how this was created. Basically, I love how he's been using, other than the tonalities and the rhythms of the Eastern Kurdistan and Middle East, mixed with, number one, actual musicians from the area, and number two, actual instruments, and kind of introducing the West to the Eastern instruments. That is super interesting to me. Okay, let's have a listen to Kashish Hammam and we're gonna have a chat about it later on. So Mushkila says that he has come into contact with this wedding musician Mustafa, and he fell completely in love with his midwis playing, and that was the first time he went to Jordan to record with him. And he says that we should imagine him as an Omar Soleiman that is still playing wedding music. So he's very dedicated and still very legit, and that he's still traveling around and giving wedding concerts in Jordan. And it was during this trip that he also gained even more insight into the widespread underground culture in Jordan and felt quite in love with it, we can say. Okay, so after that release, we have Okay Fatma. This is his album that was released in March 2024, so it's quite recent, and it was premiered on Radio Fluka. This album takes listeners through an emotive club music, always very faithful and in contact and in touch with incorporating North Kurdish timbres and diving into the realms of bassy dubs. The overall theme is around being stuck, which is what he has repeated endlessly to us through his music, through what he's fighting for, through his travels and documentation. So that is something very close to his heart. So Mushkila originally had an EP ready in October last year, but after the Israeli-Hamas conflict broke out in October, he decided to delete all the tracks and write something completely different that was relevant to the world as he was experiencing it at that moment. This also is similar to what Zuli did when all of his material was stolen and he started rewriting everything from zero. But his was more of a condition that he was placed in, but Mushkila literally felt like that is the urge and that is what he needs to do at that moment. So he scratched everything out and started from zero his new album that was very current and relevant to what the world was going through and what his world was looking like at that moment as well. So the album was written between October and December 2023 and is a product of how the artist sees the world changing. The visuals of the music portrays a contemporary dance embodying the concept of being stuck, which is either physically or mentally. That is what we were talking about when we were saying that the whole theme of the album was around being stuck. And there are also 2 remixes and 1 collaborative song on there. So the first one is with Siumata, which is what we're going to listen to further on if we have time. And he is one of the DJs and producers that has made a name for himself in the club scene with his versatility and genre blending productions that is a perfect fit to Mero and Mushkila and his mixing of cultures and bridges and unity. The second remix is from Niege Niege, affiliated artist with DJ Travella, who is responsible for the most exhilarating music of recent years. And lastly, he has the collaborative song with Hedo Hydrate, an artist who is emerging from the rave-rich grounds of Denmark and has created an immersive music experience around himself, we can say. Also, as we're listening to his mix for the drift radio that we have in the background over here, you can see that even if he's mixing other tracks, the concept of percussions and how he uses them in a lot of dancey, tribal, wedding music kind of concept is very present, even though he's doing a DJ set that is not his original music. So as we talk about his unity and connecting with other producers and DJs, it brings us to his latest track, Burna, that is kind of the fusion of genres, and it's not only about gathering friends, but also uniting communities, which is what he stands for, and what the solidarity that, in his opinion, the world needs. So we're gonna have a listen to Burna now. So yeah, this is what I was talking about when I was saying you can hear the mixes. Um, it's kind of similar to what we're listening to before during his mix in Drift Radio with the samples and the chops and also the rhythmics and the midwees that we can listen to and the traditional instruments that all blend together in band now over here. And this is actually Mushkila and Hedo Hydrate together doing a collaborative track. Okay, so this brings us to the fact that we were talking about fusion and community to one of the main and important parts of Mushkila's, we could say, work life, but also one of the most important aspects of his life that brought him into wanting to create this community. And it is the collective that he has created with his friends in Copenhagen that is called Bohar. Bohar is a new club concept that celebrates music and artists from Southwest Asia, club collective and platform that he started with Yasmina and Kuchulu, cultivating visibility for artists who struggle to feel represented in the club nights. So the purpose of our parties, Mushkila says, is to create a free space for artists from the diaspora and from other hinterland and Southwest Asian countries where they can feel inspired and share musical ideas. Mushkila says that this is exactly what motivated him along with Ozzy and Yasmina to start their collective Bohar. And it's the same desire to create a space for joy and community, which has been his mission ever since he started and ever since he found kind of his footstep and his path in the musical industry that he has started. And he says that we have started Bohar by inviting one of the front runners for this kind of club music, DJ Pleat, from Australia to Copenhagen. And I love how the worlds have started to collide and just connect together, as DJ Pleat has been my episode 1 deep dive. Mushkila also says that one of my favorite and very important bookings that Bohar has done is Iranian Nessa Azadikha, who is recently teamed up with Ida to release a compilation, Women Life Freedom in Solidarity with the Fight for Freedom and Justice for Iranian Women. And he also explains Nessa has fought quite hard for women in Iran, and his work to put Iranian electronic musicians in the spotlight has been so intense and so constant, and she's been struggling and trying to persevere in this aspect. And she has fight a lot, and she's been fighting for something very important, and that's why it means a lot to us to have her come and play, and it's gonna be huge, he says. So this was one of the time where they booked Nisa to go and play for the Bohar collective, and as a Persian DJ and artist, I was so proud to hear and to see that the other Persian, especially Persian girls in this case, have been persevering and have been fighting for the women life freedom fight, and have been also being heard. And to have Bohar invite them over and for their club night is such a huge achievement. I feel like this is an insane and absolute circle moment for me, especially because when I was looking into Mushkila, I had no idea about them booking Nessa, and who is also one of the founders of Apronic Records. Apronic Records is a musical embodiment of the strength and defiance of Iranian women, founded as a response to the Women Life Freedom movement in 2022. There's actually a super funny story here, which kind of made this whole concept even more full circle and interesting, because back in the day, it was June 2023, I think, where I saw a story by Ida, half of the Upronic Records company, that she was looking for Persian artists who had done tracks in diaspora, and she was wondering if anybody had any tracks that wanted to send her for have her to listen, because she was working on something for DJ Mag. And just randomly I came across this story, and as I saw it, I sent her a message saying, yeah, I actually have this track, it's called Sleepless, in which I talk about the state of being awake and asleep and kind of not knowing where you are, which is kind of like a feeling where you have when you've just moved somewhere else and everything's different and everyone's new, and you feel like you're in a sleepless, being awake or asleep kind of state. And I sent it over to her, and she had a listen, and she really liked it, and that's how her remix for the track began. So basically, the name of the mix is called Global Mehmuni Mix, and she was working on it for DJ Mag, as I mentioned before, which focuses on 10 artists from Iran and its diaspora about their work and the common thread that links them across continents. And I'm so happy to have been part of it in such a magical way, like in a way that I don't know, felt so surreal to me. And to have my mix be there, connected to Mushkila, connected to Copenhagen, has been such an intense and crazy kind of moment to be living. It kind of like a sleepless. Is it reality? Is it a dream state kind of state to be in? And seeing Apronic being represented in Bohar through Nessa was an incredible moment to just, I don't know, to just savor, you can say. And now I'm gonna have you guys listen to Sleepless, the original track. And if you want to listen to the mix, you should definitely head over to SoundCloud and have also, there's the playlist on DJ Mag, which has the whole mix on it. So it's called Global Mehmuni Mix, and it in Persian it means global party mix, where just as Mushkila says, the world and the populations and the communities just unite in a big party. Okay, so that was Sleepless, and it actually started with it we wanting it to be just like a outro track, and it started like that. But then, as we listened to it more, it kind of had turned into a mantra, and I just wanted it also to be in Persian because it was kind of like a spiritual mantra for me, because it says, in sleep and in being awake, I'm constantly looking for you and I'm searching for you. Can you see me? I'm all alone here. And that is also why we started the whole remix edition for Sleepless as well. And through that, we kind of came up with the idea of my latest EP starting all of its remixes. So I think it was kind of like a moment of light being shed on, I don't know, the Persian part and my roots being connected to my Western side as well. Okay, now I'm gonna have you guys listen to the remix edition that is in my latest remix edition EP, and you can just see the different vibes that we tried to go for, and I feel like it connects quite well with the whole Mushkila and the Eastern clubbing atmosphere. So hopefully this will be played in Bohar soon as well. Fingers crossed. So I think if I have to have my final words on this episode, I'd say that Mushkila is one of the artists that I've seen that has been fighting the most for the whole collective idea of connecting people and kind of bringing light to situations of musicians and artists and populations in diaspora. And he's been doing it through his music, which is a very interesting way and a very pure way to do it. And you can see that in his music videos, for example, in Huzun or in Qad, and also in his daily activities, for example, having Bohar as a collective. And really loved having researched him and finding out that this has also expanded to my Persian roots as well. So that has been Mushkila, and I hope you guys have a great night, and I'll see you next time.
you.